Okay, welcome everyone. You've joined the Telex CSoft Basic Setup, needed to talk to an IP Gateway webinar. We will go ahead and get started here. So I'll just give a great big welcome to everyone who's joined. And so, let's go ahead and get started here. CSoft. CSoft is a voice-over IP software console. We offer standard radio control features. CSoft is scalable from anywhere from 2 to 200 lines. With the the part about CSoft is that you're virtually unlimited for the number of dispatch positions you can have on a network. The other unique part about CSoft is that it is flexible. It's customizable. In fact, you see here on the screenshot that one of the different displays that you can actually do with CSoft. You can change channels with CSoft. From radio frequency selections, up to 1,000 frequencies are supported. We can do cross-patching. Up to 30 concurrent cross-patches can be done at one time. So 30 separate cross-patches can be done. We allow radio-to-radio and phone-to-radio patches. We have an instant recall recorder. We do up to about 10 minutes. That is supported. We have parallel console status. So if a parallel console does change channels on you, you will know about it. We support paging. We do two-tone 100, 1000, DTMF, Knox, stacked, and manual programming for paging. We do support the different signaling formats, MDC 1200, encode and decode, FleetSync, encode, decode. We also do DTMF and over-the-air FleetSync by 6-tone, and we also support the emergency group and the individual and status calls. Now, we do have information windows. We have a per-line call history, active emergency history, and manual call list and status indicators. Now, for the other indicators that we do have, we have a 12 and 24-hour clock, a VU meter, a PPT indication, instant recall recorder. Progress is actually listed in the upper part of the screen under this little section right up here. Some of the other features of CSoft, the vocoders that we have 4 different vocoders that we support. We also do aliasing. So you can do up to 5,000 different aliases, or from radio IDs to specific names. We do support multiple user interfaces, so most common like touch screen, mouse, foot switch, and trackball. Speakers, we can have up to 6 speakers connected to one dispatch console system while using an 80HB4. With displays, most common, we can support microphones. We do have various ones. We got various goosenecks, desk mics, and headsets that are supported with this. We have an interface. It's a value-added option. It's a P25 DFSI. It is supported with our version of CSoft, version 6.2 and above. SIP telephony is also supported. We do support basic SIP. And we'll go ahead and mute that line there. And so with SIP telephony, you can get some basic SIP telephony. Allows you to answer and place telephone calls on licenses above 24 lines. Now, to get enhanced features, you have to buy a separate CSoft key. Now, that is a value-added option that you can purchase to get extra features for SIP and to be able to transfer calls, three-way calls, the various features of that sort. We also have intercom capabilities within CSoft, so you can intercom between multiple consoles if you need to. We have alert tones. We can also play enunciations. Basically, it's a pre-recorded wave file that we can play out to a selected radio line or even other radio systems, even within the patch. We also have program group buttons and program mute buttons. So with one button press, you can group any number of lines together or mute a number of lines at one button press. Now we're going to talk about our IP223. This is our network audio gateway. This IP223 has been out for a number of years now. It's basically the heart of our dispatch interface. This is the box that actually connects to the radio itself. So with the IP223, we support 2 devices per unit. We have 6 modes in an IP223. We got local, console, tone, phone, IDEN, which is also known as Nextel, and Tetra, which is primarily a European format, but has recently landed in New Jersey. We have jitter buffers, so we can adjust for any kind of network issues that you may be having on the network. And the network transport that we support is unicast and multicast addressing. We do support. Now, with the IP223, we have a limit of up to 100 frequencies per line. So it allows you to change up to 100 different frequencies per radio. With the IP223, we do have the ability to do a line-to-line crossmatch. So if you have a UHF radio connected to line 1 and a VHF radio connected to line 2, you can do a crossband repeat with just one IP223. MSK signaling. We do encode and decode MDC 1200 and Fleet Sync with an IP223. Now that is a value-added option as well. We do offer direct serial control of the Kenwood radios, typically the TK X180, X90, the X150, and X180 radios. We also can control the NXDN Kenwood radios and the 50X10 series radios. And we do have different delay buffers within the IP223 to kind of help compensate for any cross-matching or any other audio issues that you may have with a repeater system or with the radio. Now we're going to talk about our IP224. Our IP224 is our next generation of IP gateway. It's our new standard. It's pretty similar to the IP223. The differences that you'll find is that we only have 2 modes in the IP224. We have local and tone. We do have the same similar network buffers, so it's all programmable. We do support unicast and multicast in the IP224. But the improved install times, basically with the following that you see here, it's all front panel configurable. So you no longer have to go in through the web page to be able to change levels or change the IP address, things of that sort. We do have an auto configure feature. This is a pretty slick feature. So if we are connecting to a known radio system that we are known to work with, like typically Kenwoods that we mostly work with, we can automatically configure the jumpers, like the hardware settings for you, the levels, and so really, you just change the serial port param, it'll automatically configure, in this case, we'll say a 7150. You could change the serial port params to that, and it'll automatically set your hardware and levels to what we recommend here to be set up in the factory. We do support 4 different vocoders in the IP224. We support the standard Telex 32 kilobit codec. We do AD PCM32 and 16 kilobit. And then we also support the 64 kilobit codec, which gives you higher quality, but also it requires a little bit more bandwidth to go across your network. We did simplify the I/O cabling. Instead of a DB25, we now have a DB37 per port on the IP224. So those of you that might be familiar with the 223, if you had 2 radios that were serially controlled, you no longer need the serial splitter with the IP224. It's all grouped in that DB37. We also have an additional transmit group port on the IP224. So we now support 3 TX port numbers. So individual and 2 other group transmit port numbers per line. I get a lot of questions about this, what you would use that for. It allows you to group multiple IP224s or 223s, vice versa, with one line in CSoft. So you can key up a group of radios with just one line in CSoft, so you can kind of save some room with your CSoft keys in your CSoft design. We have analog tape outputs. This is a separate DB9 that's on the back of the IP224. So no longer would you have to split out the DB25 pin 11 to get your tape out. It's now on a separate DB9 on the back of the IP224. And we do support serial communications with the 224. These are the following serial communications that we support: RS-485, RS-232, TTL, CAN, USB 2.0 for radios and to other devices. So the main feature differences is that the IP224 improves the install times by being front panel configurable. We have the new auto configure feature. We have front panel test points. Web page configuration, same as the IP223, but this one allows you to do everything from the web page. We have 4 vocoders in the IP224. We have simplified I/O cabling, a single DB37 for all your pins. Additional TX group port. We have analog tape outputs, which is a separate DB9 on the back end of the IP224. We have active audio and logic monitoring. There is a system status page on the IP224's web page that allows you to read levels live off the web page. Serial communications. We support 2 additional serial communications with the IP224. Well, actually, more than that, because we did RS-232 and TTL with the 223. So we actually do 3 more serial communications with the IP224. The RS-485, the CAN, and the USB 2.0. Now, local control we can do with the IP224, so we added some additional BCD outputs. So it allows up to 256 channel changes with BCD instead of the 64 that you have with the 223. And so we also have additional programming function locations on a per-line basis up to 1,000 when you're using with CSoft. So if your radio does support up to 1,000 frequencies and we serially control that radio, you can change channels up to 1,000 frequencies. So here's a picture of the front of the IP224. So we got the display, which is a color display. I cancel that. That's actually a black and green display. We got the soft buttons that you can use on the front to be able to go from line 1 to line 2. We got an intercom key. It allows you to intercom directly from the IP224. If you had a handset plugged in, you can actually talk out to a CSoft console or another console that might be connected to it. Of course, we got our 2 radio test points, as you see on there. They're designed for a banjo-type connector. So you can actually measure your transmit and receive audio on the front of the IP224. And we got a USB port. Just keep in mind, currently this port is not functional. Basically, it does have power on it, so you can charge a cell phone if you so choose, but currently has no other operation, at least at this time. But there are some plans in the future to be able to make that active. And of course, we got some indicators on there. We got a transmit LED. Basically means is that it gives you a visual indication whenever Ethernet traffic is being received or sent out from the IP224. And of course, the link light to let you know that you got a good active Ethernet link. Here's a picture of the back end of the IP224. You got a radio 1 and radio 2 port of the IP224. These are DB37s. Here's the accessory port. This is the DB9 that you find your tape out. We have a primary and secondary Ethernet ports. Currently, right now, the primary is the only one that is active. We do got a future version of firmware that's coming out that will enable the second port to be a backup Ethernet port in case one Ethernet port did go down. And of course, you got your power and your ground lug. Now, the main advantages of the IP224 over the IP223 is that the 224 is hot swappable. So it eases replacements if you ever have to replace boards. We have additional vocoders. And keep in mind is that the cable mount to the chassis is no longer mounted to the main PCB, so you don't have to take the whole rack apart to be able to change out a board if you need to. We have the auto configure mode for the IP224. We have 3 different transmit port numbers versus the 2 that we had in the IP223. The IP224 is software controlled, so there are no jumpers, and levels can be auto-configured with the IP224. We do support up to 1,000 channels on a stereo-controlled radio within CSoft. It is front panel programmable with IP address and audio levels accessible from the front panel of the IP224. With a DB37 on the 224, we allow more capabilities for channel changing versus the DB25 and DB9 on the IP223. So you no longer need the serial splitter with the 224. And, of course, we have the per-line analog tape output on a separate DB9. It's not part of the radio output connector as it was on the IP223. So, as an example, we got an IP223 or an IP224 in this example. In this setup, we could have a CSoft connected here with as the control console. We will be able to PPT, monitor, receive, and transmit audio. And in this case, we can do channel control with BCD, relay, serial, or tone mode. Okay, so what we're going to do is to give you an example here. We show CSoft, the IP224, being directly connected to this radio here, then going out to the tower. So, what we're going to do is if you guys have any questions, go ahead and press the raise your hand button on your webinar screen. And if you want, I'll go ahead and unmute your line. You can go ahead and ask your questions. And then I'll answer all those questions, and then we'll go ahead and do the demo. So we'll go ahead and open up the webinar now to any kind of questions here so far on the slides, at least that I've covered so far. Any questions so far? Okay. Well, if there are no questions, we'll go ahead and continue on. So, what we're going to go ahead and do now is pass my demonstration here over to my demonstration. Oh, wait, here we go. Got some questions coming through now. Got a question here. It says, hello, if the attached radio manages the NDC 1200, the IP224 can be ordered without the NDC 1200 option feature. Well, that's not entirely true. You would have to buy the value-added option for the IP224. And, in fact, that is actually purchased on a per-line basis. Now, I do have a question on the DB37 serial splitter. The IP224 does not need a serial splitter. The serial splitter was actually done for the IP223 because on the IP223 we had a separate DB9 that had the serial data on it. So what you would have is radio 1 would be connected to pins 2 and 3 on that DB9. So to be able to serially control 2 radios, you would have to have a serial splitter to break out to that DB9 to control radio 1 and radio 2 serially controlled radios. Now, I have another question here on, does the DB9 only use speaker audio? The DB9 on the IP224 is a tape output. So we got a plus and minus, positive and negative audio out for the IP224. It'll get you transmit and receive audio. So it'll get audio from the console, and also from the radio. Another question. Can two IP224 units be utilized to create a radio over IP bridge? Okay. The radio over IP bridge, I'm assuming you're talking about the cross-patch feature of an IP223. Well, if you wanted to be able to use two IP224s, yes, you can do this. You can receive audio into one IP224 and then key up another opposite IP224 to key up basically two different radio systems to create like a virtual crossband repeater if you wanted to. Okay, let's see. And to answer the question from Alvaro, yes, you will need to order an option feature to be able to do MVC 1200 encode decode or FleetSync encode decode with an IP224 or an IP223. Another question is, can the 224 be used to make a crossband repeater with its two lines like the IP223? Currently, that is not the capability of the 224. You would have to use two different IP224s to be able to make that possible. Okay, and here's another question. There's a question on the IP224. Is it unlimited dispatch seats like the IP223? So I think I understand this, is that the 224 and the 223 is no different from the IP223 for licensing. So it's all going to be controlled from CSoft and the number of seats or lines that you need to be able to control. So how CSoft works, you can buy it in a number of lines or the number of radios or audio sources you're looking to control. So if you have one IP223 connected and you want to control it with CSoft, you need to have at least a two-line key to be able to control two radios on one IP223. And the same would be applied to the IP224. Now we have another question from Scott. Scott has a question on the 224 if it does console mode similar to the IP223. Unfortunately, no. The 224 only has two modes in it right now. That is local and tone. All right, and let's see. I got another question from Tori. Does value-added items need hardware upgrades, or is a license added via software? If you do buy the options for the IP224, it's actually an option that you can buy straight from the factory, or not straight from the factory, to your dealer, and it would be a value-added option that you would buy at the time of ordering the IP224. And you can do the upgrades later, and what we would need is just the serial number of the IP224, and we would issue the code so you can actually add it in the field. Now, here's a question here from Darby. Will the IP223 do crossband channel changing? Currently, no. The IP223 will not do that, nor will the IP224. It's basically whatever the channel that the radio was on, it'll just send and receive the audio. Now, if you wanted to be able to change channels, you would have to use CSoft to be able to change the channels and then patch the radios together.
Did you get a message from Bob?
Okay, yes, I do have a message from Bob. Let's see. To explain the group transmit feature. Basically, the group transmit feature, now, is that in reference to CSoft or just directly on the IP224? Okay. Well, basically, with the IP223, let's see here. The group transmit feature with the IP224, it allows you to key up with just one line in CSoft. So just using one line in CSoft, you could key up a group of IP224s out in the field. What this allows you to do is if you have multiple IP224s out in the field, you could literally have 2 lines in CSoft and key up 2 groups of IP224s out in the field. Hopefully that kind of helps explain it a little bit there. And let's see here. The NTRBI gateway, that is a value-added option for Moto Turbo, and we will not be covering that today. Let's see. I do got a question on how long the IP223 will be available. Well, to my knowledge, there is, I have not been told of an end-of-life date yet. So it's still currently available, but as you could probably guess, it probably will have an end of life, but have not heard of an official date as of yet. Okay, looks like that's the end of the questions there so far. So let's go ahead and get over to our demonstration. Okay, now get over to my PC. All right, so now what you're seeing here is CSoft Designer. So, if you were to go ahead and build a CSoft design, well, first what you need to do is start off with your multicast addresses. So in this scenario, we're going to say that we're going to set up a new CSoft design with an existing radio that's already in use. And so we're setting up a spare console up. So, what you first need to do is figure out what your multicast addresses are. And the easiest way to figure that out is to open up your web browser and log into your IP224 or 223. So in this case, I'll show both. I'll show the 223, and so what you want to do once you log into it is go to the Multicast address setup page. And so here, you will see the multicast address. We're going to set up line 1, which is a radio that I have connected to my local repeater here in town. And so this is the multicast address. Here's the receive port number. Here's the transmit multicast address and the transmit port number. Now, the 224 is similar. In the 224, you'd go to the multicast address setup page here, and then you will see the multicast address here. You got, for line 1 in this case, we got the same multicast address, the port number, transmit multicast, and TRIEX port number. And there were several questions before on the transmit group port numbers, but here are the 2 fields that you would see there for the transmit group port number A and TX group port number B. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this multicast address, and we're going to set this up into our CSoft design. So it's 225.8.11.63. So let's go into CSoft. We'll go to the Edit menu, go to Setup Per Line Parameters. So we're going to make sure line 1 is enabled, and I'll call this one my repeater, which is K0, KKG. And my multicast address is 225.8.11.63. My receive port number was 5024. My transmit multicast address was 225.8.11.63. And my transmit port number was 6024. The base radio IP address. This is typically the IP address of the IP223 or 224 that you're looking to control. So, in my case, that is my IP address. Now, if we want to be able to change channels on the radio, we want to go over to the frequency area. And so what we'll do, we'll enable the first, let's see, at least 12 frequencies. Because I know my frequency 8 is my weather radio, and my frequency 12 is my K0 KKV repeater. And these are just generic frequencies that I have in here for testing purposes. So then we'll go ahead and say a close here. And then we'll close here. Now, we can go ahead and start adding our buttons into the CSoft design. So to get started, we'll right-click anywhere on the part of the screen and then click on Add Button. Then we can go into right-click on this button and then go to the properties of this button. And then we'll go ahead and start with the PPT buttons. And then we'll go to PPT Main. And then I'm going to go to the Colors tab, and I'm going to change my border color to black to match my background. Make it look a little nicer, I guess you could say. So now, we now have our PPT button. So now what we're going to do is we're going to click and drag this down towards the bottom, and we're going to copy this button. And an easy way to copy within CSoft is to hold down the control button on your keyboard, and then use your mouse button to left-click and drag it up. As simple as that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create an instant PPT button. So right-click and go to the properties of this, and we'll go to PPT per line. And we want to make sure that the line to associate with is our radio line. All right, so now we got an instant PPT button. Let's go ahead and create another copy, and we're going to make this one our mute button. So we're going to make this one mute per line, and then we'll say OK. Now, I forgot to create a master mute button, so we'll take this one, make a copy of this, and drag it down towards the bottom. And we're going to change this mute button to mute main. All right. So now, another thing that we need to add is a select button. So we're going to copy this mute button here, bring it up, and we're going to go to the properties of that and tell it to be a select button. And make sure it's associated to our right line. Now, the other button that we need to create is going to be a different button. So we can change to our different frequencies. So I'm going to right-click to bring up the little menu, and we're going to tell it to add a frequency control. This one looks a little different. So what I'm going to do is go to the properties of this and go to the frequency control button. And what I'm going to do is make sure that the drop-down direction is going to be below, and we'll leave those settings just the same. But I'm going to change my border color to be black, and then change the orientation to be vertical. And then we'll say OK there. Now, I want to be able to expand this button down a little bit to kind of make it look a little nicer. So what I did to do that is by clicking on it to make sure you got the target on the button, hold down the control button on your keyboard and use your arrow keys, left, right, up, down, to be able to expand or contract the button. And then if you let go of the control button, you can use your arrow keys to move the button up and down, left, right, to put it specifically on your design where you need it to be. All right. Now we need to add some volume buttons. So let's right-click, and then we're going to go down to Add Volume Control. So we got our first volume button. Let's right-click on that and go to the properties of this button. Right now it's set for Volume Master Select, but where I want it is going to be on a per-line basis. So I'm going to change it to volume per line. Make sure it's associated to my K0KKP repeater line. And then let's go to the Volume Control tab. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it as vertical, and I'm going to change my maximum gain on here to 12 dB. And then I'm going to change my background color to black. What the maximum gain does here is actually give you maximum control over your volume. So by default, it leaves it at 0, but it's a good practice to be able to change that maximum gain to the 12 dB. So now, with this button here, we're going to roll this button up just a little bit to kind of make it match up to our other line. All right, so now we got a per line volume control. So let's copy this button, And we're going to bring a copy down here and another copy over here. And we're going to make this one volume master select. And then this one volume master unselect. Now, a neat feature is that if you want to select a group of buttons and move those around, you can draw a square by left-clicking and drawing a square around the buttons that you want to move around. Use your arrow keys to move them. And then what I'm going to do is expand these buttons. So I'm going to hold down my control button and use my arrow keys to expand these buttons out to make them look a little bit bigger. And now, lastly, what I'm going to do is add some text to kind of label things out. I'll make this one K0KKV, and I'm going to blow this one up a little bit and give it a label. And I'm going to copy this label and put one down here, and copy it again and put one right here. But this time, I'm going to right-click on these and then change the text. So I'm going to make this one master, let's say, M unselect. And call this one master select, or M select. And so it looks like we're a little off here, so let's go ahead and move this one down. There, and scoot this guy down just a hair. All right, so now we can go to File, and then we'll save this design. And for our demonstration purposes, we'll leave it in my documents and call it my first design. Then we'll save it. What you will see here is an error checking field. So by default, the way we set it up, we didn't find any errors, so that's a good thing. So let's go ahead and say close, and we'll close that out. Now, if we wanted to run our CSoft design, we can certainly do so. Let's click on the play button there. And let's see if we can get it to run. Of course, it's taking its time here. Let's see here. Where are we running? Of course, already open. If it's open, where is it at? Oh, here we go. Okay, sorry. Probably had too much going on my screen at any one time. So, kind of demonstrate how we could change channels here. We could right-click on this. Should bring us, excuse me, that was a left click. And we'll bring up our frequency list. So what I'm going to do is change it to my weather radio. And there we go. We've got receive audio there. You see a little R on the select button and our view meter up here in the upper right-hand corner showing activity. So now, if we wanted to, we can change channels just like this and go to my repeater channel. By clicking the up or down arrows, we can change between channels. And we go back up to weather again. Oop, too far. There you go. And go back to some of my other channels. We got audio there. Volume controls, up or down. You got your master unselect, and then the master select to make sure your volumes are there. how you get your mute button there. And mute that line, so that way you can now mute that line. Now, in this case, showing you an example of being connected to a TK7150 radio. So this is what I'm using for channel control. We do show control over various Kenwood radios. It can be a TK7180, 8180, 7150, 8150, NXDN radios we do support, and TK5710s, 5810s radios we do support as well for serial control. All right. So with that, that's the end of the demo. And so I'll go ahead and let's see here, pass control back, go to my other computer. Oh, let's see here, I did the wrong screen. Oh boy. And now what we have here is our live screen. And so now what I'm going to do is leave it up to everybody else. Let's see if they got any questions. Oh, one thing I did want to give you here is on the steps and tips to build your design. This is basically the number of steps that I did to be able to create my design. And as soon as I get my screen back, let's see here, share monitor 1. Let's go back. And so here's the steps and tips to build your design. So if anybody has any questions on that, please just let me know. And so I open it up to any questions that you guys might have.
Can you go back a page?
I sure can. Oop, that's previous. Previous.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right. And yes, I will be able to make a copy of this webinar. In fact, I got it recording at this time. And so it won't be a PDF, but it will be eventually posted onto our website. I got a question here on to elaborate more on the frequency change, up to 1,000 channel limit with the IP223. Now, you can do up to 1,000 different frequencies on the IP223, and yes, you can do into different zones and channels within that zone, but you are limited to 1,000 in total. It's the same thing with the IP223. You could change channels into different channels and zones with the IP223, and to my knowledge, the 223 did not have a problem with that. And yes, the 224 does support channel change through multiple zones. And from Darby, the IP223 does support BCD channel selection. It can only do up to 64 channels with BCD on the IP223. A question on what is the base IP field used for? Now, Scott, that was a question from you. The base IP field, I'm assuming in the IP223 or within CSoft. With CSoft, it's actually used to use for whether the IP device goes down on the network. In other cases, it was actually used for telephone control. But for now, it's just primarily used for the CSoft to know when an IP link goes down or stays up, and allows you to be able to switch between backup radio or primary radio if you need to. Got a question here from Alvaro. A time ago, Telex recommended the use of Cola PCs for CSoft applications. Yes, we did, and we still do. We do recommend using our PCs, but we do allow the ability for people to use their own PCs if they so choose. It's just a high recommendation that you get an AD-HB4 with the use of that PC to mitigate any kind of possible problems with sound cards. Now, Alvaro, I've got another question from you on can I use recognized trademark PCs now? So, in theory, yes, you can. You sure can. Just make sure you use an AD-HB4. Got a question here from Tori. Let's see. Let me see if I can understand this question here. Supporting network doesn't have multicast enabled with the IP223 code to sleep. Is there a fix for this other than turning multicast on? Oh, I think I understand his question. Tori's got a question on the IP223. Is basically on across a wide area network. Is if the network doesn't keep the multicast address ports open at all times, typically a router will prune or delete the multicast list from the router if there's no traffic after a certain amount of time. Okay, so I'll repeat that. So an IP223 or 224 has a multicast address field, and if the 223s or 224s don't broadcast audio or traffic across that multicast stream in, say, a number of hours, what could happen is if the router's not set up properly, it would prune that multicast address list from the acceptable list and no longer allow that multicast to pass through it. And so what would happen is that you would have to reboot the IP223 to send out another request to the router to tell it to rejoin the group. And that's the only time that the 223 actually does is sort of power up. And currently, that is still the case. And so, unfortunately, the 223 and 224 only send that up on boot up. But it is a setting in the routers that you can turn on to tell the router never to prune that multicast list from the fields. So that is a setting in the router. So that's a recommendation that you do to set those routers up to never prune the list for the IP223s. Okay. Now, let's see. From Danny, we did get a question, is the 224 just a combination of the IP223 and the AD-HB4? No. The IP224 is basically a replacement of the IP223. It's an updated version of the IP223. The AD-HB4 is an advanced headset box that allows you to have headsets and desk mics connected to it, even Nina lines connected to the AD-HB4. Got a question here from Tim. Can you clarify the crossband setup? Do I understand that the receive of one IP224 can send as transmit to another IP224? That is correct. What you would do is actually crisscross your receive and transmit port numbers on the 224s, just one of them. So we'll say IP224A and IP224B. You would crisscross your receive and transmit port numbers on just IP224B. So that way when one receives, it causes the opposite one to transmit, and vice versa. Okay. Are there any other questions that I could try to help with? All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar. And please keep in mind we will be doing further webinars in the future. So please keep in touch on telex.com to look for any future webinars. Thank you. You all have yourself a great day. Bye-bye now.